Okay, 5x5's in chat. Again, if you're watching this on a replay, you're probably wondering what that is. We do actually do this as a live show. A live show on Space Coast Live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, because it's Space Coast Live, so we work on Eastern Time. And then we do this show, which is the Shuttle Show, Shuttle Sunday show, which we cover many missions in order, and we're up to STS-41-D. And thankfully, we're joined by our resident shuttle expert, which is Mr. Sawyer Rosenstein. Say hello, Sawyer.
Hello, Sawyer. I feel like that's becoming a tradition at this point.
Yeah.
Uh, how's it going? It is exciting to welcome a new orbiter into the fleet for Shuttle Sunday.
Indeed. We have lots of things to show you. Lots and lots. This is why we're dedicating this Shuttle Sunday to one particular mission. And the reason why is because it's Discovery's maiden flight. So not only do we have the mission, and not only do we have lots of content on what Discovery did on their first mission, but we also have a baby pictures. I did promise baby pictures, so that's what we're going to start bringing up first and foremost, which I believe will be in this folder here, which I'm going to bring up in 1 second. So this will be showing you how this orbiter was constructed at Palmdale, which is fascinating to watch because you've seen all the orbiters are born in California. And that's where it gets really interesting because we have, in order, starting with this one here, hopefully it's going to display. I'm just waiting to see if it comes up and displays. We can see many random pictures, but then I'll go through a few in order, which shows the construction of the orbiter herself, which is great. There we go. I like to bring this one up first because we're watching a lot of TPS work being conducted on Ship 30 at Starbase because they are redoing the heat shield ahead of Flight 5 of Starship. And there's some similarities sometimes when you see those close-up pictures. They're working on things such as the gap fillers. The gap fillers are a well-known thing with the Space Shuttle TPS. We're noticing that all the tiles look perfectly black, and people may look back on show pictures and say, well, they were all black with shuttle. There were like grey ones, light grey ones, dark grey ones, dark black ones. That's because the black ones were the new tiles, and with a new orbiter, all of them were the same colour. They had not done the battle scars of re-entry just yet. So that was a cool photograph to start with. I'm going to start going through what is a lot of photographs here. So we'll look, see what we do. I do love this one because this is the Palmdale plant floor, which shows basically where they were building Discovery. There, you can see the frame they were starting to build. I've got some actually earlier photographs than this as well. But it is actually really cool because they could have two orbiters in there. Usually, you can see the head of Discovery there. The headless Discovery waiting to be installed. But they would usually have two orbiters in there. One would probably come back for a modification period, and the other one being constructed. And then later on, once all of them are constructed, they'd have them basically being like a service for your car. So that's really cool. I do love this photograph because it just shows the scale of the place, which is still there. So it's really cool in Palmdale, but it's just obviously been revamped to whatever they're doing with it now. I think Jack mentioned it's US Air Force stuff now. That's a nice picture of when she was completed. Nice little roll out in front of the crowd with humans for scale, which is really, really nice. Looking very clean. You can go and see Discovery to this day at Smithsonian in Jules, and it is you can see the battle scars along her cargo bay and payload bay, and you can see how new she looks there. So that is a
Wait, and
lovely
where?
photograph for context. Did I say I said Jules, but it Dulles, it Dulles or
It's
something.
Dulles. Yeah,
There
just
we go.
right outside Dulles Airport at the Udvar-Hazy Center. Yeah.
It took me a while to stop calling Macy's Macy's. So yeah, and then people mentioned the department store was not where they tested rockets at Starbase. So
No,
yes,
that's where the Rockettes perform, is Macy's Herald Square.
oh
The
here we go,
Rockettes perform at Macy's.
and we're off. Lovely photograph there on the back of the 747, the SCA shuttle carrier aircraft. Really great picture there. That was actually many of these photographs you'll have seen before. Not all of them by any means, because they are taken from L2. A lot of them are personal photographs, including that one, which have been donated to the L2 thread related to this mission. Lovely photograph there of Discovery still being brand new. And that's a famous one. That one is one you will have seen before. That was a presentation. And I believe that was her first crew there as well. Let's see, there's Judy Resnick. So yes, that was the first crew. Were there to greet her, be leaving the Palmdale plant, which is really nice. And a really nice position in Discovery there as well. That's the empty bay of Palmdale. We're going to go through some order now with the construction of Discovery. That you can see there, they're actually built not unlike the OPFs, where they had platforms either side, so they could just basically work on the orbiter in the middle. This is the first arrival of equipment. We're not too sure what it is 'cause it's in a box still. But that is how Discovery arrived. Modular parts. There's the payload bay. You can see they actually brought some items on ship. That's a nice photograph there because you can see Challenger. So Challenger was, correct me if I'm wrong, Sawyer, from the timeline, but that had been Challenger being constructed before her first launch while they were just about starting on Discovery. Would that make sense on your timeline? I can't imagine Challenger being returned at this point for a modification period yet.
I believe you're correct at that point. Yeah, that would be the final construction. So it looks almost done at that point.
Yeah.
And
So that's what I
then
was meaning by the two orbiters at the same time. They could work dual flares in Palmdale, constructing
right.
these orbiters. And there's
And then
lots of
that would
little
have
Easter
shipped
eggs
out,
here.
and then Atlantis would have been the next one to be built after that.
Yep, and that'd be a future Shuttle Sunday. We do have baby pictures of all the orbiters. So we, as you probably saw in the previous Shuttle Sunday, we had baby pictures of Columbia and Challenger, and now we're on to Discovery. But also we got baby pictures of Atlantis and Endeavour as well. Endeavour, ironically, being made mainly out of spare parts. A lot of people think they had to start from scratch with Endeavour. No, Endeavour was mainly spare parts put together.
We'll get to my favorite. We will get there.
I just love this because you can see. Imagine being that's your office place. You
Not a
just
bad view.
basically it's amazing because imagine going to work every day and you're thinking, right, I've got some paperwork to do. Quite monotonous day today. There you go. Look at these offices down here. I love zooming in the pug. And you've got the orbiters behind you. I mean, that's going to be motivating. You are literally working on the vehicles that are in the same building your office is inside, which I think is really cool. There we go. We're starting to see some construction now. You can start to see the shape of it. You can see the wings being attached. You can see the forward end. There's the flight deck, which was built individually, modularly. A sad story. I hate to bring it up, but when we lost the orbiters, Challenger and Columbia, a lot on the investigation noted how the crew module compartment separated almost intact, especially with Challenger. That is partly why it was like its own particular structure that was added rather than like breaking up in with the rest of the orbiter, which is no help for safety in such an event of such a tragedy. So it's a real shame that, but that's how they built them, and they obviously were not thinking of that. They were thinking of how best to build these for orbiters. There we can see installation there. Humans for scale as well. Imagine working on this and then seeing it launch so many times.
And it's also so rare getting to actually see the skin underneath too.
Yeah, let's zoom in. I do love zooming in on these photographs. To say they're like decades and decades old, you can get some real good quality zooming ins here. Let's see if we can zoom in on this sign. In fact, I've not done before. Hands off glass.
Written in handwriting, yeah.
Yeah, really, really cool. Skipping through. There we go. It's starting to see more of the shape now. This is making more and more sense. And of course, yeah, they did cover it in like this foil before they then started applying in this case would have been blankets, wouldn't it? This is the cockpit area, so this has been blankets. The TPS is on the belly end, and
One of the
we'll
upgrades
start.
at least to it, yeah, but still the adhesive kind of layer that they would attach it to, in
Mm.
a way. Not so much adhesive, but a flatter layer to attach it to rather than straight to the aluminum.
Which again, Sawyer, takes me back to Starbase. That's what they've done now with Ship 30. They had the TPS on. Ship 30 was complete. Then they took lessons from Flight 4, and Elon said on his X said, we're going to take all the TPS tiles and put a protective blanket underneath and then put harder tiles on. And we're all like, maybe it just means put certain areas, but then they took all the tiles off. It's like, okay, everything, fair enough. And we've seen in our photographs, and you'll see in our a lot of you will come over from Starbase Live, so you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll have seen that kind of like layer, and it was in Ryan's article. And I wish I could think of what the name was, but it's got special material. It's probably that version of what you're seeing there on Discovery before they then put the TPS tiles back on, which they're doing now. So that's interesting. Elon said 4 weeks to launch, by the way. I don't know if that's optimistic or not. I think more like 6 weeks, I would say, but we'll see. Moving back to Shuttle, there is the aft. That's the MPS area where the engines get attached. That is really cool. Again, modular. It's all been pre-built. They're just putting it all together at Palmdale. Oh, that is awesome. You can actually see detachment points for the SSMEs.
Yeah, these are easier to build than the actual Lego Shuttle Discovery, just saying.
Yeah. Do you think? Is it a real challenge? I've not tried it myself.
I just completed it. Yeah, it's a
How long did it take
years
you?
long, but yeah. Uh, well, it was on and off, so a couple weeks.
That's not too bad. The problem is that's why I've not done it because I haven't got the patience. I have not patience for that. I'd love to try, but I'm the notorious kind of person who'd say, "Can someone build it for me and I'll take it off your hands?"
But yeah, the
Yes.
modular nature of the shuttle, I think, is also just impressive to help kind of speed up the build. It's like you could see right there where the maneuvering nodes are going to have to go by the nose there, which is also where they have a bunch of the hypergulls and things. So
Yeah.
just stick it in.
Awesome. Really cool. Again, I've looked at these photographs when I was picking them out for Shuttle Sunday. I've seen them before as well because they're in L2. But I'm still zooming in and finding things. And that's why I always recommend that if you especially if you're L2, download the photographs, which you can do, and zoom around because they're really good quality. The things you'll see in the thread are just like the preview images. Download them and then start zooming in like I'm doing, like woo, all the way in like that. It really is well worth it because there's so much detail and there's so many things you can learn. There we go. Right. So we're looking at the homes, aren't we? Looking at homes pod here.
That's absolutely no home section. Yep.
Mm. It does look a bit weird. It almost looks like it's not actually real in this. Obviously, they've not attached the nozzle on it. And the irony is that's another future thing. The OMS engines, the OMEs, are actually the ones that retired with the space shuttle have been donated to Orion's for its service module. They will move on to new engines eventually, but that's like the SSMEs have been donated to SLS for the main engines. So they're living on as well. Whoop, there we go. Now we're starting to see the RCS. Look at this.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah. Obviously, very much protected. Again, this is FOD, they call it, foreign object debris. You do not want anything like some, well, basically anything like some rubber bands or whatever getting in there. You want to protect it, so that's why it's covered in like cellophane there. Now we're starting to see the rudder speed brake. People call it the tail, but technically you get told off. If you ever say that to a shuttle person, say, "Oh, I Discovery's tail." They'll go, "No, no, 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 rudder speed brake. That's what we call it." You've got to learn your lesson there. And that's where we're starting to see some TPS, some natural tiles being installed, because that did need TPS tiles. And amazingly, they all had the names like VO, 7O usually starts with, and then a load of like serial numbers. And to the point that there's maps of them from each orbiter. And some schools have been donated TPS tiles by NASA. And we've had school teachers come to us saying, "Is there any way you can find out what the history of this tile is?" And it's not every tile we have, but we've got some maps from when they were doing TPS inspections during the space shuttle program that we can actually track them. And we found several tiles. We could say that tile flew with Atlantis on STS-132, and they go, "Wow!" And it's amazing because they don't give them the history with the tile, which is amazing. But we can usually find it.
Yeah, it also helps that each shuttle had its own sort of V type of indicator that you could tell which vehicle it was from too.
Mm.
The one I have is only a VT, which is for a test vehicle, but still, it was a test
Still,
article.
still nice to have it. But yes, I think it was a lovely thing that they did donate some tiles to schools, and then it was a shame they didn't give any history with it. But maybe they just didn't think that. Maybe they thought the schools were just interested in getting a hold of a tile. That's fair enough. But it's been one of the biggest pleasures where our guys have gone through the TPS inspection maps and noticed that with the maps they show the actual numbers of the tile, so we could then track it back. And I think Nigel, one of the guys in our forum, does an amazing work with that public thread. And we'll go through the L2 documentation and tell them in the public thread, so we'd let them know which tile is which. And I love that one. We find a tile because the teacher's reaction is usually amazing.
I can confirm though, at least they give you which mission space shuttle tires flew on when they donate those to educational institutions, having worked at one that had one of the tires.
That is awesome. The tile, we do something on tires at some point because they are fascinating. The fact that you can get the first of all the PSI they were put to was incredible, but also there were, I think it was nitrogen pump, wasn't it, so that they stayed inflated in space.
Correct.
Yep, lovely. Here we go. We're starting to see more of what we think looks like a shuttle now. You're starting to see a lot of the black and white you normally get. You can see the tiles being installed there already on the forward RCS. And they're now obviously deep into the plumbing areas of this because this is where they're getting really hands-on with it.
And we're almost at the point where they either made a mistake or a very intentional marking on Discovery, which I'll point out when we get to it.
Oh, yes.
You know it.
I do. No tears before bedtime.
Yep.
Hey, there we go. A little bit of, I pretty much gave it away, but there we go. There we go. You can see the forward RCS now pretty much installed. And Discovery looking more and more. I mean, they've got the protective covers over again, anti-FOD. That's on purpose. We can see the aft end now. It's got the tiles as well, ready for the SSMEs. That's the body flap. Look at that. That's actually that's
Oh,
amazing. He
again, the
knows the
size.
photograph's been taken. Look at it. He knows there's a photograph being taken. That is amazing. I hadn't spotted that first time round, but that is really cool. Again, we're still on the baby pics. This is looking a lot more like like the Ohms pod. Sorry, I should say. You can see the RCS, the veneer thrusters, and that's where the OME would go.
Yeah, you could also see the protective tile right underneath where the engine is about to be installed, too. And there are those tires.
I was going to say, I knew I had some tire pictures somewhere in these baby pictures. There we go. That is very cool. And they are not small tires. They are
No, they are
not small tires. Big shout out to Lindy, obviously involved.
not.
You know what? It does happen on the forum, but I don't think it's ever happened on Shuttle Sunday. Oh, in fact, I do know we've had some shuttle experts, some really clever shuttle experts, just adding some more context in the comment section because we record these and we put them on the YouTube channel. And we've had some people who obviously I feel have worked on the space shuttle program the way they just knew so much more. So maybe if you worked on the space shuttle program, we're asking a lot here because we're going back to the 80s. But if you worked on the space shuttle program during construction at Palmdale, by all means, just say something in the comment section because we'd love to talk to you. Look at the TPS here now. Sorry, look at this. This is looking clean.
Oh.
That is, I mean, again, I should have brought up a retirement picture of Discovery to show what a TPS looked like. Obviously, a lot of tiles were in replace, but you'll have seen a difference between these all black tiles and what the orbiters ended up looking like because they had lots of flight flown tiles and then some replacement tiles, which then gave markings like a fingerprint. You could almost recognize an orbiter hanging in the belly shot during the transfer aisle. You could say, oh, yeah, you don't need to see the name. I know that one because it's got lots of black marks near the main landing gear doors or things like that. You'd know which orbiter was which. It's amazing.
You're
But
giving away the
right,
cheatings of how Chris G and I would
yeah,
be able to tell a shuttle without seeing the name.
we need Chris G on as a special guest. I don't know what his SpaceX contract allows him, but we need Chris G on as a special guest. I'll have to ask him. Say, look, what does your NDA allow you? Because it's not about SpaceX, so that's one thing. And if we saw I made Shuttle Sunday and avoided my references to Starship like I've been doing all so fast, maybe he'll be allowed on. That'd be awesome. We need Chris G on for a special guest section, definitely. Now we're
Ah,
starting to see the payload bay doors.
and you could see one of the upgrades that they actually made for Discovery in a way to kind of help lower the weight as well as improve it. Those were I believe, the first ones that used graphite epoxy instead of aluminum for the doors.
Mm, nice bit of Sawyer trivia there.
Yeah, which by the end of the program, uh, if we're kind of going boxing, it was a middleweight. Discovery, I believe, was smack dab in the middle in terms of orbiter weight, with Columbia number 1, Challenger number 2, Discovery number 3, Atlantis number 4, and Endeavour the lightest because it decided to eat more salads. I mean, was newer.
Yeah. I remember Bob Crippen's lovely tribute to Columbia after she was lost. Obviously, crew was more important to lose, but there was a lovely section where Bob Crippen did one for Columbia herself, and he said Columbia would often get bad mouth of being a little heavy in the rear end, and he was referenced to different weights. The shuttles did not weigh the same. I mean, Columbia was the heaviest.
Yeah, it was also when they realized they didn't have to tile everything and could use more of the thermal blanket.
Mm. Now we're still seeing pre-SSMEs here. I think they didn't install any SSMEs in Palmdale. They put the tail cone on for the transport, but they didn't install the SSMEs until they got to Kennedy. There we go. Look, I never saw any pictures in the baby pictures of SSMEs being installed, so I assume that was the case. They waited till they got to Kennedy for SSME installation, which makes sense. But there's a tail
As,
cone. That is for aerodynamics during the ferry flight.
as much as people dislike it.
Yeah, I don't know why, because I think it does look kind of cool. Getting ready to roll out there. Looking like Discovery. There we go.
Yeah, the
That,
cover off the nose as well. There it is. This is a good picture to talk about how you can tell Space Shuttle Discovery without looking at the name.
yeah,
There it is.
little teardrop. Discovery's one looked like a little teardrop. There we
Yep.
go.
For some
Nice
reason,
and zoomed
all
in.
the other tiles around it are either the white tiles or blanket, and then don't know if this was a accident or intentional, but Discovery had the little teardrop on that one side there.
Lovely. Also, a big shout out to the photographers at the time. There was a big issue with actual photographs from Palmdale that they just were, a lot of them were not saved on the internet. And we managed to get a lot more via people who had literal photographs and scanned them. And I know people were saying, L2 doesn't always have them because I've seen some on Google. Yeah, there's definitely some out there, but not the amount. I've not even used even half of what we've got baby pictures here. But I thought I'll just bring up a nice selection that works. Here's a transport to the Palmdale airstrip before the ferry flight. This is a lovely photograph. You can actually see how they're transported. It was not an SPMT like they are now. It was the truck pulling a trailer. Not unlike Endeavour's little escapade through LA to the to the California Science Museum, which was hilarious because they had to cut down some trees just so she fit. But that was a nice little, great little photograph there.
And I believe they had to temporarily remove some stoplights as well.
Yes, yes, it did. But I tell you one thing, that endeavor to travel through LA was amazing because so many people turned out. Everyone was on their roofs. Everyone was out there. I thought it was a lovely send off. I thought all the orbiter retirement send offs were well done. So respectful.
Yeah, and
I'd have hated it if they just covered him in like plastic, like they did with Atlantis before, because they had to do that because of protection during the building of the exhibition. But I hated it if they'd done no fanfare for the orbiters, and they did it big time. It was really great.
yeah, in Sawyer Flex, I have one of the road signs that had the shuttle crossing on it.
Sawyer Flex in chat. Again, this is a live show. People watching back on the video going, why is he asking us to type things? This is a recorded video. Trust me, we're doing it live right now, but you're just listening it back on the recording. So that's when you'll hear references to live. By the way, if you've got any questions, talking to the live show audience, if you've got any questions, do it on the Spaceflight in chat. We'll try and find time to go through some of the questions as well, making it interactive, as we like to do. There's an awesome photograph
Never
of,
gonna see it that clean again.
yeah, on the back of the SCA. Going over California hillside. Absolutely beautiful photograph that. 905 was the SCA. They had two. 911 was the other.
Yep.
And that was the last picture of the baby pictures. So we can now go on to the other folder. If I have to click the right things here. Of, I think it's pre-flight. Let's go to the logo. Here we go. We always like to look at the mission patch.
Yes.
Again, there's clues. Sawyer, go through the clues.
All right. Before this became STS-41-D, the original designation of the mission was STS-12. So that is why there are 12 stars located on the patch. The red, white, and blue is meant to celebrate the inaugural portion of the flight. You see the giant thing sticking out of the shuttle. That's the OAST, which we'll talk about in a bit. Basically, the precursor to the current ISS solar arrays. And then, of course, the ship indicating after some of these ships that Discovery was named after, including the one by James Cook, as well as Henry Hudson.
Very nice. Apologies to Starbase Live people who'd be looking at the pin comment with the link. The link actually was a bad link for some reason, sending people to the wrong place. So I'm sure most of you know to go to Space Coast Live. I'm going to just redo it in Starbase Live to make sure everybody who's watching this live, which is most people watching it replay, be thinking, "What am I talking about?" Don't worry about it. We're doing a live show, and I'm making sure people who want to watch the live show get to the right place. There we go. Pin the right comment. There we go. Then people can come to the right place. So we can go past the logo and go on to some preparation pictures. Let's see what order we've got here. There's a crew. My favorite being Judy Resnick. Just
Yes.
amazing. Sally Ride, obviously, and Krista McAuliffe, they become better known. Eileen Collins, very well known as well. But Judy Resnick deserves as much fame because she was an amazing member of the crew. And that was also a lovely photograph because you can see Discovery, the sailing ship in the background, and also the crazy solar array payload, which became, I think, the longest structure in space at the time from a crewed vehicle.
Correct.
We do have a picture of it during the mission section part of this, and you'll see it in the video we've got as well. The
Yeah.
video is extremely long, so I will be skipping through parts of it, so forgive me for that, but it's
By the way,
also really cool.
Judy Resnick was the second U.S. woman ever to fly into space, by the way, as well. And yes, people commenting on her hair, it is just as fantastic once we get into orbit. And also, Mike Mullane, who's in the bottom left there, uh, wrote a fantastic book, if you haven't read it, called Riding Rockets. Content warning, there are definitely some adult themes in said book, but goes into great detail about STS-41-D as well as all the other missions too, and Judy Resnick herself. He's got some great comments about her, so definitely worth a read. That was the first shuttle book I ever read, and I still love it.
Nice. There's Discovery on the pad. He's a little bit out of order, but don't worry, we're going to go through some of these pre-flight preparations because a lot of pre-flight went on with this mission being the first flight Discovery, including the flight readiness firing, which I'll show you a video of, which is very cool. It's where they actually do a static fire with the space shuttle. It did happen. People go, a static fire with the space shuttle? Yes, it did happen. They literally just fired up the 3 SSMEs and kept the SRBs not igniting. It's not like China where things accidentally left off. This one was held down. That's a little photograph I was donated to us, which is inside the MPS, because one of the problems was the SSMEs during the preparation. So that was a nice little picture I got from one of the engineers, just showing they're working inside to try and find out what went wrong. Because there was an engine swap, I believe, wasn't there, Sawyer?
Yeah, they ended up having to do an engine swap at one point during it, so yeah.
Yep. There's a transfer aisle in the VAB. That's how they do it. They roll the orbiter in, called rollover, not roll out. Roll out is where the full stack rolls out to the pad. Rollover is where they roll the orbiter from the OPF into the transfer aisle of the VAB. They hook it up to the sling and then take it over, up in the air, and over into the high bay for mating with the SRB and ET. And there is the mated stack. And I've always loved this view. We have a lot of future Shuttle Sundays way down the line because we had our own photographers at KIC in the early days of NSF. Nate Muller, Larry Sullivan, Stephen Burgess, and Brian Papke were all out there for us, and they usually went up onto this level of the VAB for rollouts. And there are some fantastic photographs. We should make as metal prints because they are amazing of rollouts. And there is rollout going down the crawlaway to 39A. And there's 39A on the pad. That was actually arrival at KSC. I told you it might be out of order, but that's arrival at KSC, which is a lovely photograph. There's Mission Patch and the crew again. That's the artist rendition of this payload where they would extend this array. And this array was really important because you can see how that technology was then applied to the construction of the ISS. So
Yeah,
that was really cool too.
and keep in mind, inside the actual payload bay itself, I believe this was a total of 18 centimeters.
Wow.
Giant array was in like an 18 centimeter package before rolling out crazy long like that.
That is impressive. I like how big the moon is, by the way.
Not to scale for that, yeah.
It's not to scale, no. More pictures of rollout and on the pad. And I think now we're going to try videos. So bear with me while I try and press the right thing here. We're going to look at the flight readiness review, which would be this one here. There we
Flight
go.
readiness firing?
Let me know. Flight readiness firing, sorry. Let me know if you get volume when I actually press play on this thing. Let's see if we get to it.
T-minus 1 minute mark and counting. At this point, the firing system which releases the sound suppression water onto the pad is armed so that those valves can open and allow pre-ignition water onto the launch pad structure. T-minus 45 seconds and counting. T-minus 40 seconds. At this point, the solid rocket booster flight recorders are turned on. T-minus 33 seconds and counting. Gaseous oxygen vent arm is retracted. 28 seconds. We're now on flight or orbiter control. The final command for engine start will occur at approximately T-minus 10 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds now. Preparing to enter the final sequence. T-minus 15. T-minus 10, 9, 8. Firing. 7. Main engine start sequence. We have main engine start. We have 3 engines up and running. T0. T plus 5 seconds. T plus 10 seconds. T plus 11, shutdown of number 1 engine. T plus 13 seconds shutdown of engines number 2 and 3. All 3 engines have shut down. The shutdown sequence appears to have been normal here on the firing room television. We're continuing with the high-speed APU run at this point, T plus 24 seconds.
GLS shows engine 1, 2, 3 shutdown. Copy, GLS.
T plus 30 seconds, the APU high-speed performance.
Shutdown, engine 1, 2, 3. GLS, go for it. APU high speed. APU, perform APU high speed run and shutdown. Report completion. The APU. APU copies. We're on high speed now.
High-speed run of the APUs is now in progress. That'll continue for about another 1 minute. At this point, the ground launch sequencer automatically safes the vehicle while this run is being completed and returns it to a safe condition.
Holy twang.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to pause the video because that is near the end of the video. But I was pointing out in chat, watch out for the twang, as they call it. And you'll see during the flight readiness firings, I've got review on the brain. So thanks for correcting me earlier, Sawyer. It was amazing because they are bolted down. And the only way it's bolted down is via the SRBs on the bolts. That is nothing else is holding it up there. It is bolted down by the SRBs. So they fire up the SSMEs and there's all that thrust coming out off center. And that's where you get the twang. During a normal launch, the twang moves it forward and it comes back to center, and that's when the SRBs ignite. During the flight readiness firing, of course, it's just going to keep going. So it's going to be twanging backwards and forwards for ages like this. I'm going to try and do it again where I don't play any volume on this, so bear with me while I just mute this video. I don't know if it'll still play through the speakers, but we'll still find out. So you'll see here, just watch the twang. Here we go. Should be able to talk through this. You can see the engine nozzles there. They show you they're still rocking backwards and forwards, but the best one is the external tank where you can see at the top, which is the next viewpoint from this.
Yeah, not used to seeing it continue to wobble.
I know. There we go. That's where you really see it. Just rocking backwards and forwards. So that is really cool. So that validated the mission to go forward, but they had some incidents. It didn't get off first time, did it, Sawyer? Let's go through what were 3 scrubs before the successful launch, because the first attempt was June the 25th, and he actually launched August the 30th. So you can see there was some issues there. But the first attempt, it was a failure of the orbiter backup general purpose computer forced a scrub. The T-minus 9 minute was T-minus 9 minute and holding point was the decision point on that one. Do you know any information about that one, Sawyer?
All I know is that was one of the, like you said, one of the backup GPCs, the primary computers that they have on board. There are 3 main and 3 backup on board. So, I mean, they have redundancy, but that's one of those computers you don't mess with. You want them all up and running, if possible, during the flight. So they decided, let's take a day. I'm not 100% sure if that one was completely replaced or not in that day. But yeah, that may have caused some issues a little later.
The second one was more dramatic.
A lot.
A lot more dramatic. Now, I'm going to play a video on this, but there's some things to look out for because I don't want to talk over it, and you won't hear me anyway because of the noise of it all. But this was what's called a redundant set launch sequencer abort, which is where it literally is down to the final seconds. And the abort was called because they had an engine not fire up. And the problem was, I might not be describing this right, so I'll leave it to Sawyer to describe, but they weren't too sure that one of the engines actually shut down during the abort. And they go, brake, 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 engine 1 not shut down. And like, that is panic stations. That's bad. When a controller goes brake, brake on the loop. I have never heard that since. I don't think I've ever heard that since, where a controller gets onto the loop and goes brake, 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 brake. That is seriously bad.
I haven't even heard that before this, to be honest.
I know. It's really crazy. So I will play the video and then Sawyer can just go through a little bit more. Yeah, because this is a fascinating video.
Things with it, in addition to, you know, on board getting a different reading from the people on the ground of what was going on with that engine, and a delayed decision that may have saved some of the crew's lives as well.
Yeah, here we go. Ready, boys and girls? Get ready for the brake break.
We have a go for main engine start. 7, 6,
5. We have main engine start. We have a cutoff.
NTD, we have an RSL abort.
We have an abort by the onboard computers of the orbiter Discovery.
EPD, verify the big monitor SRM and ignition is safe. EPD, verify that. Okay. Brake. TLS shows engine 1 not shut down. Okay, PLT. CSME, verify engine 1. Shut down engine 1? OTC, we did not show engine start on 1. OTC, CSME, I can verify push shut down and engine 1. We should start prep engine 1. Okay, are all engines shut down? You can verify that.
We can now verify all 3 engines have been shut down.
All engines shut down. We have red lights on engines 2 and 3 in the cockpit, none on 1. All right, CSME, verify engine 1 safe for APUs down. Yes, I can verify that. OTC, TPE, go for APU shutdown. Okay, PLT, conformity APU shutdown for the checklist.
Orbiter test conductor informing pilot coach to shut off the auxiliary power units, these which provide the hydraulic power to the orbiter.
Okay, you want the GBC 5?
So yeah, that was dramatic. I'm going to go back to the screenshot area of the video there where the engines fire up. 1 second, bear with me. There's the abort. There's the spark igniters. That's the clear hydrogen gas from the aft. Yeah, the roughies. I always call them spark igniters. It's a force of habit there.
No, that's fine. Yeah, most people. That's one of the biggest misconceptions with shuttle is those do not ignite the engines. Those
No, they don't.
clear out
Yeah.
the gases around it.
Yeah, it's not like a gas stove where you turn the gas on, you click before it fires up. No. No. Opposite way around, in fact, anything. But yeah, the problem you'll be able to describe this better, but it was related to the fact that engine 1 didn't actually fire up, but they thought it had. So because it did not say it shut down because it never fired up, that's where the confusion was, correct?
Exactly right. Yeah. So you could kind of hear them talking about that of, we had 2 red lights on engines 2 and 3, but not engine 1. So engine 1 never turned on, but as a result, like you were saying, it gave the indication that it didn't shut down as a result of the RSLS abort. So they thought it was still on, even though it never actually turned on. So that was part of the confusion there. And then came the other confusion of the what do we do about getting the crew off? They had thought about, let's use the slide wire system to get them out of there just in case. And it turns out there was some hesitation because up to that point, it had never been tested with an actual human in it. Afterwards, Charlie Bolden, would eventually become a NASA administrator, did get to be the one to test it, but they decided let's not. And it's probably a good thing that they did because they ended up turning on the fire suppression system, basically, so all of the water jets that they kind of have on the pad, so the crew got soaked as they left. But it did help because there was, I believe, I'm trying to remember if it was a hydrogen or a helium fire that happened. It was hydrogen fire. And for those who know, hydrogen fires are kind of invisible. You may have seen it happen at certain race events where there are people running around like they're on fire with no flames. So they could have seriously gotten burned or hurt had they actually gone for the escape and then fly down at like 30, 40 miles an hour on the slide wire system.
Absolutely, yeah. I want to thank some people, by the way. I just noticed in our panel, we've got Booster 1058 doing 2 super chats here. More Zoom, more good. Good coverage, thanks and stuff. I believe that was when we were zooming in on the baby pictures. So thank you very much for your support there. 2 of them as well, which is really appreciated. We do have some questions because we've got a very long mission video coming up. So I'll do some questions to sort of like give it a little space in between showing the next video, which is quite long, covering the crew talking about their mission post-flight, but it has lots of cool views and some very unique return views. I was surprised. I didn't remember them at the time going through the video until I actually get ready for Shuttle Sunday. The way we see RCS firings during return from the ground, I've never seen it before. So that's something to look forward to. But let's rush through some questions here. A lot of them are statements like, where's Jack? James Howard asks. Jack is currently in transportation back to Starbase, waiting until the storm blows over to get ready for Flight 5 coverage. as you imagine, we're going to have to start getting ready sooner than later. So even though it's 4 weeks at the very minimum, according to Elon, he thinks 4 weeks. So we take Elon's comment as a minimum, a net, no earlier than. It's not going to beat Elon's prediction. Let's put it that way. It never has happened that way. So we have to get ready for Starbase Flight 5 for our coverage for that. So that's why Jack's busy right now. But Jack will be on future Shuttle Sundays. Don't worry, he likes coming on them. Westy
Doesn't run away.
asks. Yeah, Westy asks, how do you know roughly how many modular? Do you know how many modular parts there are in building an orbiter? What a question! When we get to Endeavour's maiden mission, I do have schematics of how they use the spare parts with new parts they needed, and that might give us some clues. I'm thinking well over 30. I'm sorry, I'm guessing. Do you actually know the answer?
Oh, that's a great question.
Is yeah.
I gotta think. I mean, you've got, let's see, the forward RCS, the payload bay doors, the crew compartment, um, ohms, the rudder speed brake, all of the aft RCS systems, the thrust part for the main engines, the body flap, the elevons, the wings in general, the landing
Yeah.
gear. Those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head.
I'm thinking 30 plus, but let's go through. You know what I can do, Westy? I can literally ask some of our L2 engineers who are still around, which is really cool because they actually are following Starship. No word of a lie. I know at least 3 well-known former shuttle managers who have retired and they are still hanging around our site because they're really interested in what Starship's going to provide. I find that fascinating because I love to bring up the fact that my claim, should we say, it's not a fact, my claim that Starship is everything shuttle want it to be. Because we're looking at the reusability again. We're looking at capabilities. We're looking at different mission objectives. We're looking at things like that. There's some synergy there. They look nothing alike. That's fair enough. But the actual promise of what shuttle was going to bring is now being envisioned by Starship's future. So that's why I make that reference. And that's why they hang around. They're fascinated by it. So I think that's really cool. Joe X asks a question we partly answered already, which is, were all the shuttles the same size and weight? Thanks for Shuttle Sundays. Well, thank you, Joe. We covered the weight. There were differences in weight, but the same size. I believe they were all very much identical in size, Sawyer.
That way you could have all of the ground connections actually line up. So yeah.
Yep, indeedy. Thomas Harper asks, I heard every single tile on Shuttle is unique, different to the next. How true is that? Every single tile? I'm not sure about every single tile, Sawyer.
Well, I mean, again, like I was saying, each tile has a unique number, not just for the location, but also for the orbiter. So, uh, majority of them are specifically individually cut, stored into a computer, and then cut as needed to replace.
Fascinating. We need to talk to more TPS folks because
Yes.
we're talking that many tiles. That is one challenge and a half. It's the world's biggest jigsaw, if you put it that way. Hermie asks, if they were to rebuild the shuttle, what changes you think they should do? Right. 1, it'll never happen. 2, if they were, for some magical reason, requiring a winged lifting body re-entry vehicle, not unlike a crude version of, let's say, a large Dream Chaser, I think that would be the path, that they'd be looking at lessons learned. I'm sure one of the lessons learned would be an abort during first stage where the crew could survive it, past return to launch site, abort. The problem with the spatial, you know what? I could go down a rabbit hole here about how a side-mounted winged vehicle on an external tank and 2 SRBs is something they probably will never want to do again. SLS gets a free pass because it's inline. Orion is at the top. It's not side-mounted, so that's an inline vehicle. Sorry, I'm struggling with this question, but let's pretend some crazy decision was made that they wanted to bring the shuttle back. What changes would you make?
Honestly, take Dream Chaser, make it bigger, done.
Yeah.
They've kind of got the right idea there for the most part of, like, having that ability to escape, not necessarily having to launch side on, which there were some original shuttle ideas like Shuttle Saturn that had, a top mounted orbiter as opposed to a side mounted orbiter. I mean, there was definitely ideas that would have allowed for an escape system and also no SRBs.
Absolutely. Oh, DA Swanson's gone ahead in time to a future Shuttle Sunday STS-30. No, and a nice little factoid about STS-30 Atlantis is that Magellan, I can't pronounce that, the astronomy payload,
Magellan?
Magellan, that's the one, sorry. Thank you. Was the
Welcome.
first deep space probe launched by a space shuttle. Sorry, this is not out of shuttle order, I know. Yeah, but that's the fun thing about Shuttle Sunday is we've got a lot of missions to cover. We're covering them in order. And the fun thing is you're thinking maybe you have to butch like 3 or 4 together. No, they tend to all have their unique interest levels of different things going on. They're very much Pathfinder, especially in the early days. And then it gets later on, we're getting to the assembly missions at AISS. There's so much to cover in these missions. So it's going to be fascinating to see these factoids you mentioned there. So that's something fun. Right, let's
Exactly.
go.
Also, this one, by the way, when we've got our videos, but don't forget if you really want to see some amazing video of this particular mission, uh, there is a movie out there that you can still purchase even if you don't get to see it on the IMAX screen. The Dream is Alive. Worth every second of watching it. I've been spoiled seeing it in actual IMAX theaters, shot on IMAX film, and I'm sure we'll see some of those IMAX cameras.
Very good. Onto the launch pictures before the launch video, which is a long one. So I'll be skipping through the video. I'll be skipping through. Don't worry if you're thinking why is that video skipping? It's me because otherwise we're here for another hour. It's a long video, but I'll get to the highlight parts of it. But these are the launch photographs we've got in L2, which are awesome because that's a nice little high altitude photo showing the launch from 39A. And that's a cool ground one. You can see the arc there going into the rail program. Let's zoom in on this one. I'll never get bored. I'll never get bored of this because it is a beautiful launch. The space shuttle.
I'm a sucker for the reflection shots.
Yeah. Nice little regular photograph of launch there. The sort of thing you would see publicly. No problem at all. But let's join them in because you can see that. And there's the markings on the side of the SRBs. They were photogrammic. Photogrammic, another word I can't pronounce, which you've seen on the SRBs for SLS because that's how they keep tracking of them. Awesome launch photograph there. And there's the other high altitude one. You can see there. There they are. There's the crew. And there's on a pillar of smoke leaving Kennedy Space Center. And there's a VAB down there. There's a crawl away. Oh, really amazing photographs.
Should probably note also that this was the fourth attempt. The third attempt was the day before this. There was a master events controller that was giving them false readings, so they decided to scrub for the next day, which is this one.
And the fourth, the actual launch itself was actually delayed in the window, wasn't it? Because they had a wayward, was it a wayward plane?
Wayward plane? Yeah, it was about a 7-minute delay because someone decided to take their personal aircraft in flight into the range. Something I miss the ability to let that plane clear through and then just launch 6 minutes later. Just saying.
Nice. That's nice. I don't think we've ever seen that angle recently for a while in a shuttle photographic. Again, remembering that Kennedy Space Center is a nature reserve, so that makes sense. But do you know where that location is, Sawyer?
I believe I do. That looks like it's from the beach area kind of behind Pad 39A off to the east, if I'm seeing this correctly, possibly northeast. But yeah, there's a little road back there too that we currently set up our cameras for remotes for Falcon 9 and Falcon
Nice.
Heavy.
And then one lovely photograph to finish the photograph section off here is just amazing. Look at the crowd there and what they're seeing, the arc as well. Again, like all rockets, it's going to orbit. It's not going straight up. It's going to arc out and then go downrange, pick up the downrange speed, stay in orbit, 17,500 miles an hour, just like all rockets do. And that is a great portrayal of it in that photograph there. Right, let's try and go.
The launch there. Sorry, I'm just because I know that exact flag shot, so it looks
Oh, right.
southeast there. That is, anytime you see one of our team with the flag shots, that's the exact same flag that you're seeing from this photo in the 1980s. Well, not maybe the flag itself, but the same flagpole.
Very nice. It'd be nice if it is the same flagpole. If they'd never just changed it out. I probably had to at some point, but that's cool. Right, this video is long. I will be skipping through it to the main parts. So forgive me for skipping, but I know there's a lot of like onboard experiments and things like that where we can just go through the main highlights of this. So I'm going to mute my microphone so I don't double play this. and hit play on there, and hopefully this will work.
Here we see Discovery on the launch pad out there. Everybody talks about how things move so fast in a space program. In our case, it took 2 months to get from T-minus 4 seconds to T0. So that's not always true. Fortunately, the weather was just beautiful out there. It was nearly perfect. I think probably the best weather we've had for any of the shuttle launches yet. Here we show the main engines igniting, and the twang, the orbiter moving, was very apparent to all of us in the cockpit. You can see the twang. Those are the bolts firing on the solid rocket boosters. There was no doubt when the solid rocket boosters fired that we were going someplace in a hurry. When we lifted off, we had the heaviest stack that is launched since the Apollo days in Saturn V back in Apollo, over 4.5 million pounds lifting off. You'll see the roll right here. The roll seemed dramatic to us, I guess because we're on the outside of the stack and the real world was out there. It was a lot more dramatic, of course, than the simulator had been. We were actually carrying the heaviest payload by about 10,000 pounds that had been carried by the shuttle. We had over 47,500 pounds of payload we were lifting. You can see the shock wave right here. It's just behind the windows on the top of the orbiter as we're going through the maximum dynamic pressure during ascent. We're actually throttling the main engines back here in 2 stages to get through the maximum dynamic pressure. As you can see, it's a beautiful day. We had separation of solid rocket boosters and a little film over the windows, just like we'd had on all the previous flights, but not objectionable.
We made it to orbit, and we needed to get to work right away because our flight day 1 included deployment of the Satellite Business Systems satellite, and we proceeded on with that task, and the techniques involved were not different from those employed on previous PAM deploys. Here you see the sun shield opening. Of course, the purpose of the sun shield is to protect the satellite from the sun while it's in the cargo bay, and that all was completely normal. My responsibilities in the deployment required that I be in the commander's seat using the forward display tubes. Mike Mullane helped with the PAM deployment at the standard switch panel in the aft, and the rest of the crew was heavily involved in supporting the deployment, monitoring systems, and keeping track of the number of photo television documentary requirements that we had. The PAM, as you know, is not particularly sophisticated in terms of its onboard guidance. It requires the orbiter to point it, and it's spin stabilized in a method that you see here. A spin table in the orbiter's payload bay spins the satellite at about 50 RPMs to keep it stable on its way to geosynchronous orbit. In a second, you'll see the deployment of the SBS satellite, and if you look very closely, you can see the camera wobble right at the instant of deploy, and that'll be evident in the picture. We felt and heard that, and it was an appreciable jolt and quite a bit of bang, but we were not surprised. We had heard that from previous crews. There you can see the camera jiggle just slightly. And that was just exactly what we expected. Otherwise, we felt nothing, and it was completely normal. The orbiter systems and the satellite systems performed extremely well, and we were very pleased. The simulation that we have here in Houston is, of course, very good, and both Mike and I commented that we felt we had done this 100 times before. It felt very comfortable to do it in flight, and we just expected it would work perfectly.
On the morning of Flight Day 2, we went to work on deploying the second satellite, the SYNCOM. And as with PAM, it's a team effort. I was at the standard switch panel in the back again, and Steve was up in the front in the CDR seat. He operated, the SYNCOM is held in the payload bay by 4 motor-driven pins, and he was operating the computer to pull those pins. I threw some, Steve started a verbal countdown, and at T0, I threw some switches that fired a pyrotechnic device that allowed the SYNCOM to roll out of the payload bay. The SYNCOM is like the PAM in that it's a spin-stabilized spacecraft, but unlike the PAM, it gets its initial spin stabilization at the moment of deployment. It rolls out of the bay with about a 1.5 RPM spin and about a 2 foot per second translation away from the orbiter. The SYNCOM is the first satellite, as Henry mentioned, communication satellite to be designed to be carried strictly by the shuttle. It's going to be used by the United States Navy as a UHF radio communication relay satellite. It was essentially off in the payload bay. It turned itself on
to deploy. Tail off in just a second.
With the IMAX camera, Hank and Mike Coates get the credit for making that all work. One of the first that Henry mentioned was the fact that ours was the first flight to deploy 3 satellites, and here's the third, the Telstar satellite for AT&T. And as with SBS, it was absolutely normal. There were no problems at all, and Mike and I felt very comfortable doing the task. One of the requirements we had was to film using the RMS wrist camera the burn of the perigee kick motor for all 3 satellites. And in a second, we'll show you the perigee kick motor burn for the AT&T satellite. Notice below on the ground the lightning in the clouds, and that was very noticeable, and we're glad we got it on tape to show you. There it is. And it was so dramatic at night that the lightning on the ground would light up the payload bay. And it took me at least several seconds to figure out exactly what it was that was causing the light. And there's the perigee kick motor ignition. In all cases, the motors burned exactly as predicted, and it's a fairly easy task for the crew to monitor that burn. And as I mentioned, Judy had to position the arm from the cradle position to the observing position after each deploy. And you can see the AT&T satellite on its way.
Some sample.
By using the sun's energy. A wing this size has about the same capability as one of the orbiter's fuel cells, which is just about as much power as we typically use on orbit. The array unfolded just like an accordion being pulled up from the top by a coiled mast, which you can see in the front. The mast was made out of a fishing pole type fiberglass. And the blankets are pulled taut at 2 extension lengths, 70 feet and 100 feet. Here we have a scan from the aft window up out the overhead window, giving you some idea of how large the array really looked to us as we were doing work with it. While the array was extended, we used the small thrusters on the orbiter to try to excite the mast. We found it to be very stable, showing only small deflections that damped out very rapidly, and we were able to maneuver quite nicely to different attitudes with the array out. Here we're coming across Baja. One of the things that we noticed about the array was that it was translucent, so we could see both the sun and the Earth going by behind it as we were maneuvering. All in all, it was a good flight test for large space structures with potential future use in either space-based construction or in space station operations. And it's also a potential prototype of an inexpensive power source in both dollars and weight of the future for NASA. And we spent a lot of time taking photographs with the various cameras that we had on board of the operations of the mast. Here you see it extended to 100% with the intermediate tension bar, the white bar across the bottom, and it was quite large. There's Henry trying to take a picture of the top. And in this closing shot, we have a sunset. You can see the sun shining through the array. We were tail sun at that time, and when you see the shadow of the vertical tail on the left bottom portion of the array.
For a new orbiter, we had remarkably few equipment malfunctions. One failure we did have was one of the 3 forward display units failed shortly after orbit insertion. This was really no impact to the flight by 185.
It was along about the same time to do it. Here's and break it off. Judy came up and handled it.
There it is.
I'm just gonna pause the video for a second, yeah, because you're gonna love this part, right? There's some really cool things coming up, but this is fun because a lot of the UFO videos on YouTube are saying aliens were around the space shuttle during this mission, and NASA TV turned off the view, which was basically a T just drop out. Usually was the water dumps, the waste dumps from the orbiter, which would then ice up immediately, leaving the orbiter, so they would all like light up in the sunlight and what have you. Well, this waste dump kind of formed the world's most undesirable icicle, and they had to knock it off with the actual robotic arm. So this is a fun part coming up. You'll really enjoy this.
The Peacicle, yes, as it would later be known. But there was an actual
Communications and kept me honest with the RMS while we were doing this task.
Sorry, I started playing the video as you were talking. Keep going.
No, I was just gonna say there was legit worry that if they didn't get it knocked off, that it could damage the heat shield tiles with a giant frozen ball of urine. So let's see how they got rid of it.
Yep, it was something I had to deal with, but it is also quite fun. So watch this.
Double checking on the procedures. The ground really did a super job in putting together the procedures to do it. Here's what it looked like as we started the wastewater dump. You can see the size of the icicle on the supply port. Now watch very closely at the bottom, the wastewater dump port, and you'll see that big icicle growing right before your eyes. It grew dramatically fast. I couldn't believe what we were looking at. We immediately stopped the wastewater dump and then spent 2 days with that side of the spacecraft to the sun to try to warm up the icicle a little bit and let it sublime. We were somewhat successful in that. As you'll see here shortly, the size of the icicle was reduced. We took the procedures that the ground had sent up to us to use the arm, poised the arm, and took a look at it. We had people looking out the windows just to make sure we weren't going to bump into anything on the side of the orbiter, but we didn't have to fear because the procedures were absolutely correct. Here's what it looked like the day we went to knock it off. You can see it is reduced in size, but it's still there. We're moving in very slowly with the arm now. And what happened is you move in, you lose sight of it in the camera, so you just have to keep going. If you watch closely now, you'll see a little piece of ice go chipping off up to the top right-hand corner of the screen, and that's when we hit it. There it goes, a little chunk of ice there. Had no trouble whatsoever executing this procedure with the arm. The arm worked beautifully, as it has on all our flights. And when we pull back here, you can see just over the top of the end effector of the arm there, a little black spot. That is the dump port, and the ice is gone. Mike Mullane took this picture out the window as the chunk of ice floated by, and you can see it's a pretty good-sized chunk of ice. We were really relieved to see it gone.
It wasn't all work. Here's Judy and Steve playing a little handball with our flight mascot. Zero gravity was a lot of fun. Here, Steve and I were selected. You have to knead it. They were pretty good. There's dessert. Here we are sitting down for supper. We had trays. You can see some of the food stuck to the back there. We had trays that we could position on our laps, Velcro, and then set our food in them. As Steve pointed out, this zero gravity adds new meaning to the term "pass the potatoes." They float them all the way across the cabin. The menu was quite varied and really pretty good. People accused me, we had color code, and people accused me of always having my color on everything.
Exercise was part of our daily routine on orbit, just like it is back here on Earth. Getting set up on the treadmill takes a little bit longer on orbit, but it feels just as good to quit. And our sleep arrangements looked a lot like summer camp. A little bit of bunks here and there. 2 of us slept anchored to lockers, 2 of us slept strung across the room, and 2 of us slept on the wall. And you can notice that in 0G, when you relax, your arms tend to float up. It was very comfortable.
Mm-hmm. We didn't always sleep with the night light on.
Well, we chose a sunset as to all good things must come to an end, and you can see some thunderstorms sticking up in the limb of the Earth there on the horizon. Sunsets from space are absolutely beautiful. You've heard us say this many times. It's still true, and it's difficult to capture all the color on camera. We had a good flight, and we came home. Here you see the RCS jets firing as the tracking cameras at Edwards picked us up a little over 100,000 feet. We had some test inputs that were put in by the computer, 11 sits tests throughout the entry, to get data to verify the aerodynamics of the orbiter. And when those tests went in, it caused quite a bit of jet firing. When the last test was over, at about 0.9 Mach, I took over manual control of the orbiter and then guided it around the head and alignment circle to a final approach. As we turned on final here, you'll see some streamers pull off the wingtips as we get the final alignment. Here we're about 13,000 feet, picking up speed. We're about 280. Push over into a 19-degree glide slope. Somewhere around 2
2,000 feet, 1,800 feet, we begin to flare the vehicle out to a more nominal 1.5 degree glide slope. At 300 feet, Mike put the gear down. That was a good sound to hear that coming down. And we bring it in then for going down closer to the runway, where we break the rate of descent even further. The orbiter flies extremely well. I was quite pleased with it. It's a good, solid handling airplane. Brought it in for a landing that we were all proud of, and about 185 knots, started the nose down. The nose went down per normal. To us, it seemed like it really banged down hard, but it always does because of the negative angle tack you have. Braked it to a stop. Took us, I guess, 25 or 30 minutes to get the orbiter shut down. The thing about the orbiter is you're not through flying until you get it all shut down. That takes a while. Got our legs under us and came out and looked at it. It was an extremely clean airplane, as you've probably seen in the pictures. It came through in fine style, minimum tile damage, and the systems on board were in extremely good shape. So we're real proud of it. It's a welcome addition to our fleet. We now have 3 airplanes in our national transportation fleet, and I think we're in a position now that the agency can really go get serious about flying.
There we go. Yeah, so the RCS firings there, Sawyer. That's something I've very rarely seen. Just as Chat described it, shuttle farts. It literally was. I mean, they came back down on RCS. That was how they steered, because there was not enough air friction for the flaps and the wings to get involved. And then once they got lower, it was like, as described there, an airplane. So that was amazing to see the RCS being put through some test cycle there, because I've never seen that before. I don't know if you have.
No, I think that was one of the rare tests that we finally got to see with clear enough weather over California, plus it being Discovery's first flight, kind of just like you've seen with Crew Dragon, like we've seen with Starliner. They want to do some extra maneuvers with it while it's in space and on the way back to prove, hey, this thing can steer, it can move, we can do things with it if we need to.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, I told you we'd go over an hour, just one mission, because there's just so much to cover. We could have covered a lot more as well, but again, that's the fun thing, that we try and condense this down into a manageable hour so that it's nice and viewable.
Right,
And
we
if
didn't
you
get
are,
to mention the payloads.
oh my god, well, I did show them on the video.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
SPS4, Telstar, which was for AT&T that we heard, and Syncom/LeSat, which the first ever satellite built specifically to be launched aboard the space shuttle. We also do want to point out that this mission also had the first ever commercial payload-based specialist, setting a precedent that would continue for quite a while with the shuttle program here, and that Charlie Walker was an employer of McDonnell Douglas and spent over 100 hours on his experiment alone.
There we go. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not the fun thing. We've got a few pictures there I just put up, because I didn't actually put the pictures up, but we had the video, which was even more impressive than the pictures. But that is a cool one, because as people are rightly pointing out in chat, the deployment is very much like the arrays were deployed on the ISS. They were like in packages, and they're basically just rolled out up this coil, and that would extend them. And that's where a lot of the lessons learned were done on this mission, because that is what they went with. And we've seen a not dissimilar use of the arrays, I forget the name of the Boeing ones which have been installed in the ISS. Help me out, Sawyer. Can you remember?
The ROSAs, the IROSAs.
Roses, that's it. Yes, the
the
IROSAs.
rollout solar arrays.
Yeah, and they've been added to the ISS, which is over the current arrays as well. So they're in the same positions. But yeah, it's fascinating watching the ISS. And we'll see it on Future Shuttle Sundays, because Future Shuttle Sundays include the arrival installation of the arrays and then rolled out. There's lots of things to cover.
They also tested multiple different types of arrays to see which could, generate the most power, things like that, with the eventual idea that these might be used on the US's next space station Freedom, down the line.
That's right, because before the ISS, it was going to be Ronald Reagan's Space Shuttle Freedom, wasn't it? Space Station Freedom, which was much bigger. Well, it was much larger than the ISS became, isn't it? Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. No, they had big plans for that, and then they realized, hey, it's probably better if we work with other countries to do this and save some money on it too. So that's how the ISS came about, from parts that were salvaged from Space Station Freedom. But all of that still goes back to the first flight of Discovery.
Yep, it does indeed. Well, that was fun. STS-41-D. Future Shuttle Sundays coming up again. We'll follow the next mission along, so that's more to come. But first of all, first and foremost, thank you to Sawyer for joining us. Thank you, Sawyer.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, by the way, I don't believe there was a 41E and F, as they just threw everything onto 41D with all the delays and everything. So it's you
Yeah,
know what? Let's throw it all into one orbiter. It's fine.
and
But
also
thank you for
thanks to
having me.
Also, thanks to Jay in the background for pushing the knobs and turning the levers, making sure that when we got loud video there, he turned it down for us, so we're all nice and not blowing people's ears out. So thanks to Jay also in the background. And until next time, this will be recorded video. So if you've been watching this as a recording and wonder why we're talking about things live, it's because it's a live show. 3 p.m. Eastern time on most Sundays. We'll try and do it as many Sundays as possible when there's nothing else going on. And then we'll record it and put it on the YouTube channel. So you'll get to see the recording of it later. But until next time, thanks for joining us and goodbye.